The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and don't necessarily reflect the views of WOWT.
Well, here we are once again with another edition of Becca's Talking. You've heard a lot about some of the cuts that are going on financially and people that are being affected by some of these budget cuts. And we're going to be talking with a woman who's involved with an institution that is near and dear to my heart, but also been affected by some of these cuts. We'll get to that in a second. But first, I got to talk to you about these folks right here. Havana Garage on the Old Market. Man, I really appreciate them sponsoring this, and I really appreciate you going out there and letting them know that you appreciate them sponsoring this, because Havana Garage is it's a great place to go and relax. You go and have a cigar, have a cocktail, sit around and talk. You've got a great environment there. It's like I said, it's kind of the Rat Pack era, right? They got pictures of Sammy and Dean and Frank, and they got even a Joey Bishop picture or two up there. So check it out, Havana Garage on the Old Market. It's been around for a long, long time, and you don't stay in that business a long, long time unless you got a heck of a great product, and that they do. Havana Garage on the Old Market. So I said that, in the news, as you well know, a lot of government funding is being taken away from organizations and institutions. And there's some serious ones there about, people concerned about Medicaid and the like. So maybe we'll get to those in a future podcast. But one that is near and dear to my heart is public broadcasting. And joining me right now is Sherry Kennedy Brownrigg. She is the general manager of KVNO Radio, where I got my start of that. My first time I was actually ever really on the radio was at KVNO on the last radio show, and I pretty much I killed the last radio show, but that's another story for another day.
I wish I'd known you back then.
We had some times. We had some times there at KVNO, but it was a great environment there to learn about radio and to learn about broadcasting. And although KVNO has changed a little bit since that time, it has indeed still there to be there for the students to help them learn about communication. First of all, for people that aren't familiar with KVNO, what is it?
Well, KVNO is Omaha's classical radio, and we have been here in Omaha and on the campus of UNO for almost 53 years. And basically what we program is classical music. And we had classical music back in the day when you were on, in those early days. We had other programming as well, but it was always very cultural. And we still have the sign on, and it said, "And now KVNO is on the air as Fine Arts Radio for Omaha." We don't really call it fine arts anymore, but what we do is we just uplift the entire community with great classical music and support the arts community and the culture here in our community. That's all we do.
I don't think people understand what has gone on with the whole broadcast industry in general, not just public broadcasting, but commercial broadcasting as well. The Broadcast Act of 1996 that allowed these major corporations to buy so many radio stations, they sold a bill of goods to Congress. They told Congress that if you let us have 8 radio stations in the market, now these fringe formats like jazz and classical, we'll be able to make some money off of those, whereas we couldn't make money on a classical station, standalone classical station, or a standalone jazz station. But if you let us have all these stations, we'll be able to program some of these fringe broadcasts. Well, they let them have all these stations, and now these companies own, 3 country stations or, 2 classic rock stations, and jazz, classical, some of the more artistic, not as commercially viable formats went by the wayside. So for people that want to have classical music, and that public radio is not the only way to go.
Yeah, public radio is really where it's at in terms of that classical. In fact, there's only about 55 fully classical stations in the U.S., and we've got one right here in the Omaha Council Bluffs Metro, which I think is fantastic. And people have kept us on the air for 53 years. There are other stations out there that have a mix of news programming and classical, but very few fully classical, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because you don't really have any local news. You don't have a news department there or anything like that, do you?
No, we have an arts desk. And so the news, if you will, that we do is all about the arts in the community. So we support the arts in a number of different ways. We have Arts Today. Gabriel Escalera is one of he heads the arts desk, and he's got an army of reporters that go out and cover as many arts stories as possible. We've got a really robust arts calendar at kvno.org. And this fall, we're launching a video series called Creative Omaha, and that's about the people and places of the arts community. So we're trying to really make sure that our community understands what an incredible arts scene that we have. It's phenomenal here in the Omaha Council Bluffs Metro.
It really is. We do have, whether it be music or theater or
film,
comedy or whatever.
Comedy, everything. Yeah.
There's some very talented people here. But what would you say to somebody who says, why should the government be involved in funding a program like this, classical music like this? If it's not commercially viable, then why should the government be involved?
Well, arts is a really important thing for a community. And if we have an opportunity as a community to have a station like KVNO on the air that supports the arts and brings it into the everyday for people, that just makes our community all the better. We have a program called Classical Kids, which really celebrates kids in between the ages of 8 and 13 who play or sing, or some of them compose. And it's a phenomenal program, and you would be amazed at how many kids really find their voice, if you will, through classical music. And it's just one of those things that really enriches a community. And, you know, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, if I may divert just for a moment, because a lot of people don't understand this. You know, whether or not you are for or against NPR programming, a lot of people think the government defunded NPR. Well, what they did is they defunded the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That was created back in 1967 to create basically news and programming that was bias-free. And KVNO, you know, we're completely nonpartisan. We have no take on any issues or politics or anything. But we're still affected by this cut because what Congress just did was basically defunded the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They're in the process. It's a governmental agency that handled this money. They're in the process of basically winding down their operations. All those people will be out of jobs and it will cease to be. And they only gave, NPR got about 1% of their funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but where that came from to support NPR is from member stations. So Corporation for Public Broadcasting gave money to stations like ours. Now, we're not an NPR affiliate, so we don't send money to NPR, but stations that carry NPR, they send money to basically get the rights to air the programming. So that's what was defunded. So stations like KVNO got swept up in all of that. And it's really just one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, well, we tried to do our best and, you know, remain nonpartisan, and we are still to this day. But it creates a hole for us that we feel needs to be plugged because of the fact that this is just a station that uplifts the community and really puts our culture and arts community in the forefront.
How much of your funding actually comes from the federal government, though? Because you're a university operation, so therefore I assume that you're getting money from the state, you're getting money from the university. You also have fund drives where you do that. How much are you going to lose with these new cuts?
Well, it's only about 10%. And I want to talk about that just for a minute because it sounds like, oh my gosh, you could make that up. And that's true. But listener donations is the largest single source of funding that we have out of all the sources of funding. Now, to fill in that, we'll need to get more listeners giving, go to more grants, things like that, do some different things. But the real issue here for stations like KVNO is the dismantling of the public media ecosystem. Because we get programming from stations like WFMT in Chicago. They produce a lot of programming, or All Classical Portland in Portland, Oregon. And, we don't know if they're going to be able to do those those shows anymore, and American Public Media, who does a lot of classical programming. And so we're not quite sure. And then the other thing is that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting negotiated the rights for classical music. You know, you think about like, okay, there's a singer in pop music. A singer has a song, maybe it's written by somebody else, and they're the primary performer on there. There may or may not be, you know, other musicians there. So you don't have to pay very many people to play music. But when you've got an orchestra behind you, that's a huge musical licensing right. We might have to pay $10,000 per work to play it on the air, but the Corporation for Public Broadcasting negotiated all of that for us. And so we have to try to figure out.
You're talking about like these shows that have a live orchestra performing for you.
Or even we've got 19 hours of local programming every day.
If like Jeff Katurba does your morning show,
right.
if he's playing some recording that was done, you know, from the Cleveland Symphony back in 1982,
right?
That still costs you that much money, or how does that work?
It all depends. But I mean, many of those recordings are newer than that. And, there's a lot of even Beethoven. Beethoven has been gone for, centuries. But there is a company that holds the rights there. And so we don't have the right just to play that. It's all individual.
The Beethoven music is not on public domain?
Well, it is in public domain in some regard. So I used him as an example. I don't really know exactly whose rights are being held, but I'll give you an example during COVID. So Shakespeare on the Green was not able to perform during COVID 2020. So we did Shakespeare on the radio, and we did acting interspersed with Felix Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream, what they call the incidental music that he wrote after seeing the play. Mm-hmm. And he thought, oh, this could really use some of my great music. And so he was quite young, and he wrote that music. So we used the music, but I had to track down the rights for Felix Mendelssohn's music, and it was held by a company in Great Britain. And, it was COVID, so they said, oh, you can use it for free, but their going price was $10,000, to use that in that specific instance.
Wow.
So
I had no idea it was that expensive.
Yeah, everything is just, it's very just based, basis by case that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, the phrase.
Yeah. You mentioned you're getting involved in video now too, right?
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Well, so that's Creative Omaha, and it's a season of 6 videos where we just highlight the people and places of the arts community. There's one that's going to be done about the Benson Theater. We have one about film streams. It's their 100th anniversary this year. And we highlight things that just aren't getting highlighted any other place. For example, at the Benson Theater, that building is part of their story, a big part of it. And it's really phenomenal, the history of that building. So we're going to be focusing on that. We're doing some things about, art in the parks. Here in Omaha, there's a big move to get art in parks so that people can enjoy it, in the wild, in nature, and that art basically goes to them. And so, it's just a nice little mix of different things that we're doing.
A little sidebar here. You mentioned the Benson Theater. The Benson Theater, if you haven't been to the Benson Theater, check it out. That place, it's done beautifully. It's done beautifully. The Chip Davis supplied an incredible sound system in there.
It's phenomenal.
It really is. It's a great place to see a show, and I know they do a lot of different stuff at the Benson Theater. So I'll give them a plug too, because that is a pretty cool place.
And I love their booths. It feels like you're in an old club.
Yeah.
With Frank Sinatra performing up on the stage. It's very cool.
Yeah, I knew Amy Ryman's. I know Amy Ryman.
Yeah,
she was
she's great.
Putting it all together in that, and it was a dream of hers, and it took a long time, but she made it happen.
She's a force of nature.
Yeah. She made it happen. So, okay, so what can people do if, you say, I know that you do get a lot of donations during your fund drives and that, people help out. Matter of fact, I was involved in the very first KVNO fund drive.
Oh, what was that like?
Okay, so it was the first time we were doing it, and they didn't have the students do many of the talking. We got to answer phones and stuff. But Fritz Lee, who was the general manager at the time, Fritz Lee was the voice of KVNO and all this. And he's saying, please call this number and make a donation. And the phones were not ringing at all. I mean, we went like a couple hours and not one call. Not one call. So I came up with the idea. I said, when Fritz is talking, why don't we run a sound effect of a telephone ringing in the background, just a low-level telephone ringing in the background? And so we did. So when Fritz would be talking about bringing in the donations, you hear in the background, you hear a little ring, ring, and the phone started ringing. The phone started ringing then because it was like, oh, other people are calling. I don't want to be the first, but if other people are calling, I'll call. And that got the ball rolling. Now, over the 50-some-odd years since then, you've been able to basically train your audience to, when the time comes, to go and make the donations. But at that time, that was all new to everybody, and we had to get the ball rolling somehow. Yeah,
you had to really teach people that this is listener supported, and here's how you do it. Yeah, and we have those fund drives twice a year, but we do a lot of other fundraising activity. Outside of that, we have 2 endowments, and one for Otis 12, who of course retired last October 4th. That was so much fun. We had a great time celebrating him. But a wonderful donor just started an endowment, the Otis 12 Legacy Fund. We have a future fund, KVNO Future Fund as well. But so we have endowments, and that's a really helpful thing because I think everybody knows how endowments work, but it essentially secures the future so that if you need that spinoff money, then you're able to get that spinoff money that's invested to run the organization, and that's super helpful. I'll
do a little plug here for the podcast. If you go back onto the Becca's Talking Facebook, or rather, YouTube channel, you can go and you can find the podcast we did with Otis 12. So I had him on one of the earlier podcasts from probably almost close to a year ago. We had Otis on. So
and you had Jeff on too, right? Jeff Katurba?
What?
Have you had Jeff Katurba?
I've had Jeff Katurba on as well, yeah.
Jeff is his replacement, yeah.
Yeah, Otis is a replacement. So you talked about the kids in classical music. Do they know classical music from the cartoons the way that I knew classical music? I mean, is that do the kids today? How are they exposed to it? And what type of a kid really cares about classical? I mean, the image is that all these kids want, their rap or rock or whatever. They don't want, country. They don't want classical. How do you get kids and get them involved in the finer arts?
Well, I'll tell you what's really helped us with social media. YouTube and TikTok is full of young kids playing classical music. And other kids are really loving this. There's always going to be kids who prefer something else, but it's a novelty, and young people are really looking, this is my opinion, but they're really looking for something that's solid and has staying power. And classical music, is always being created now, but it's been created since the 1300s. Yeah. And it's just phenomenal that it's something that is attracting young people today. And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we're working with a young high school group that we want to be able to do some programming that would be on social media that really speaks to young kids.
That is a whole different thing, too, that you've had to adapt to, in that the whole new social media aspect of it and the video aspect of it. I mean,
we're not just radio.
Yeah,
we have a smartphone app. You can stream. You can tell your smart speaker to play KVNO. And we're doing a lot of other things. But, you have to be where people are.
Well, that's what this is. The same thing.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's like, when I was a student at UNO and hanging out at KVNO, doing something like this, that was like science fiction stuff. That was that's weird. That's never going to happen.
It's amazing how this works.
Yeah. I tell people, I said, we really are. We're living in a 1970s era science fiction movie when you think about it. With the computers and the cell phones and artificial intelligence and everything. But I digress. I also want to take a moment, though, and talk about Havana Garage one more time. Havana Garage in the Old Market, who been around, like I said, they've been around for a long time. Not as long as KVNO, but been around for a long time. And the reason they've been around is because it's just a great place to go. A lot of things going on downtown. Whether you're hanging out at the park or whether you're going to the CHI Center or you're going to something out of the Luminarium, or maybe you've got an event at the Orpheum that you're checking out, or just one of the great restaurants in the Old Old Market in downtown, make sure they make the Havana Garage part of your night out. Havana Garage in the Old Market. Tell them heard about it on the Becca's Talking podcast.
You know, I have to say, my husband and I had dinner down in the Old Market outside next to Havana Garage on Friday night. And the smell of those wonderful cigars was beautiful. Oh, I love the smell of a good cigar. People looked like they were having a great time there, too.
I can't tell you how many guests I've had on this podcast. When I talk about Havana Garage, they say, "Oh, I love that place. I go there all the time." You know, it is. It's.
Well, I just walk by slowly and smell it, but it's great.
It doesn't have a great aroma.
Yeah.
It doesn't. See, you don't even have to smoke a cigar to enjoy it. You just go in there and smell. You know, so.
I'm just here for the smells.
So, if somebody wants to, help out and support KVNO to make up for some of the funding that you're losing with these cuts. By the way, the money that you're losing, this money, as I understand it, had already been committed to you, right?
Yeah, it was.
So this was already in your budget, and then they say, "Oh, by the way, that check we were going to send you, we're not going to send you now, right?"
Well, there's two things actually. So the bill that was passed, the budget bill, had zeroed out for CPB. And that has never happened before since 1967. So there's that. But the rescission bill, yes, took back money that was already given to us. Now they can't go into our bank account and grab that money, but it was already committed.
Don't be so sure.
Yeah. But it was already committed, and we had counted on it, and we use it to pay for national programs. We use it also to pay, in part, a couple of salaries that we have. And those people, their jobs are secured because we have, another line that we can use. But we'll have to find that. We'll have to make that money up somewhere.
Have you talked to like Don Bacon or Mike Flood or Pete Ricketts or Deb Fisher? Have you talked to them about this? And what type of response do you get from their offices? Well,
we reached out to them when the bill was pending and told them basically that here's our plight. And we got what I think were probably, the stock responses. And they really felt like they were doing what was the right thing. And, I can't fault somebody for really believing that. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't successful.
So if somebody wants to help out then to help make up for some of this money, can they go online and make a donation?
Yeah,
How does that work?
KVNO.org. Yeah,
KVNO.org.
Yeah, you'll see donate just right at the top there.
Make a donation that way and help out. Also, can you listen online? People that maybe...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can listen right there at KVNO.org, but you can also listen. We've got a smartphone app that more people listen on our smartphone app than listen online, which is very cool. So, and if you're interested in one of the endowment funds, like if you're a big Otis fan and you think, I want to support that fund, just reach out to us. We have our emails all over the website, or you can just call us, whatever, and we'll get you to the right person. But yeah, any support is helpful.
Like I said, when I was at KVNO, you had classical music during the day, then maybe some jazz interspersed there in the evening, and then at 10:30 they turned it over to the students, which was a big mistake. It looked good on paper, but boy, when we got it, because all the management was asleep, so we just anyway. That's another story. But anyway,
they chose not to listen.
But so what KVNO was then versus what it is now are two different things. Where do you see the future of, well, maybe just college radio in general? Where do you see the future of that KVNO growing? What's it going to be like 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Well, you mentioned the term college radio. So one thing that's really important to note is that KVNO is a professional station. I mean, we have professional radio people there and office people, an operations manager and a marketing person and a development director. We have a 2-person development department. And we do hire students to work on the air. They work on the arts desk, and then we have one who actually does a lot of production for us. And he produces the midday mixtape, for example. And then we have students who we hire for the front desk. But the students actually have their own radio station called MAV Radio, which you can't necessarily get unless you listen online or you listen on HD radio, which I won't go into the technical aspects of that, but that's a sub-channel of KVNO's HD channel. So I do see that, Students, Mav Radio is a really, really well-attended, it's a club, and it's a really well-attended club. A lot of kids are very interested in doing that because they do a lot of sports broadcasting, and that's something a lot of young people they're fascinated by. But I see for KVNO, in terms of our classical radio, I see us continuing. Omaha has already told us for 53 years that we want you on the air, and it's important to us. The thing that we have to do is keep abreast of all the new technology and be there where people are. For example, YouTube that's the big thing. That's the top search engine. That's where people listen to podcasts most. We do some things on YouTube as well, but we need to do more. And so we have to get into that particular area, but that costs money. And so you have to develop the plans, and you've got to be able to do it right so that you can attract people to what we're doing.
Do you have to pay for the rights if you're using the music on the radio? That's one set of rights.
There's a whole set of other rights,
Then for using it online, and then if you use it on YouTube, I imagine that's more money?
Yeah, for example, people will tell us, we sometimes do the top 50 classical hits, if you will, that our listeners vote on, and we'll have people say, and this is going to be online, right? Well, the only place we can really do that is on Spotify. We can't put that program that we have on the air on social media or online because we don't have the rights for that. Again, that's so expensive. So it's really frustrating for us because we can't do a lot of that. We're developing some other podcasts, though. Jeff Around Town, that you hear on the radio on KVNO, is moving to a podcast. And we'll have a little subset of that on the radio, but a longer interview, because Jeff is so curious. I mean, he says, I feel like I'm so constrained, and we do not want to constrain Jeff Katurba with his creativity.
He is a very fascinating man, one of my best friends, and a very fascinating man.
He's a great guy. Yeah. We replaced one Omaha icon with another, so we got very lucky there. Yeah,
I know that it was interesting because he and I talked a lot when he was getting started on it, and it was just interesting because at the time that he was writing or doing the radio, I started writing a column for the Omaha Daily Record, so I'm involved in print. And he's involved in radio, and it's like something is wrong here.
We just crossed each other.
How did this happen? So again, so people want to help out. They can make a donation on the website kvno.org. Yeah. kvno.org. Also, you can listen to the station. It's 90.7 FM.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Remember that.
Listen online at kvno.org, or there's a KVNO app. It's available wherever you get your apps.
So you can do that. So you can do it when it's streaming, but you can't record it and play it on demand. Is that how it sort of goes?
We can't do that. Yeah.
So, okay. So, but he said Spotify. If you do it on Spotify, what?
Well, apparently, because there's classical music on Spotify and the rights have already been taken care of there. But we can make a list of it on Spotify. But we always need to find a way to make sure people go back to KVNO. So that's always a challenge. But
changing in this environment. But I'm glad that KVNO is an option. I'm glad that KVNO is there. I listen to it from time to time. I was listening to it last week, as a matter of fact, as I had a long drive in the morning, and I was listening to Jeff, and I realized, and do something like I do, and you focus so much on the news, to be able to just listen to that classical music was very relaxing, and it really was very calming. And it's like I gotta listen more often because it really is. It helps get the blood pressure down.
Yeah, 60% of our listeners, and this is true for most classical stations, say that's why they listen. You don't have to know a lot about classical music. You just want to have a little escape from the chaos, and we'll provide that for you.
And as we mentioned, we got Otis 12 is on the podcast. Jeff Katurba is on the podcast. Diane Watson, who does a food segment on KVNO, she's on the podcast. And now Sherry's on the podcast. So I think we got KVNO covered for a while.
Thank you.
But I'll tell you what, like I said, it's been it was where I got my start in radio. I remember walking into that studio the first time and realizing that, this is what I was meant to do. And it was just an amazing feeling, and nobody wanted to give a guy with a voice like this a chance on the radio back then, because everybody back then on the radio, had the voice like Otis, and it was all, and I wasn't that guy. And but KVNO let me go and make a fool of myself, and give me a shot, and I'll be forever indebted to it.
That's how you start. You get the opportunity to make a fool of yourself, and see where the boundaries are, and and where the mistakes are, and don't make those again. But it's great.
About maybe 2 years ago now, a buddy of mine that started at the same time I did, we both did, we found some old KVNO tapes and listened to what we sounded like back then. It wasn't pretty. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We talked about all the different changes with KVNO and how they got to do with all the digital and everything. Same thing is true with us. We're on the app. We're on the WWT app, the First Alert 6 app. We're on the app. We're also on YouTube channel. Make sure you like and follow on the Becca's Talking YouTube channel. Also, of course, the Facebook page and all the other social media stuff. Till next time. Spread the word, tell your friends, thank the folks at the Vanna Garage, and we'll see you later. Take care, and bye, y'all.